Hi, welcome back to the Cripe Podcast. My name is Nico. I am the news editor, and I am joined here today with Chris DeLeon, the editor-in-chief. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Nico. How you doing?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Fantastic. So the topic of conversation that we're going to be having today is focused on events, and essentially we're weighing in on whether there should be more events or if there's enough events already here at CMU. Why don't you go ahead and tell people what you think about that, Nico?
Honestly, I believe there should be more events here at CMU. Events and traditions.
Well, and my take here is that we actually have plenty of events right now, and we don't necessarily need more events. We just should have more participation at events. And even if we're not necessarily going to change the number of events, maybe just changing them so that they're going to be interesting enough so they actually draw the crowd in. So when you say that there should be more events and more traditions, what do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean, Chris, is right now, the events that we have, they're always like staggered together or like they're just compacted into like 1 week out of the entire semester. Some of these events, like there's Beer Fest or like MAV Awards, a lot of people can't participate in those. I mean, they're either under 21 or their club didn't make it, or, there's other things going on.
Okay, yeah, and there is a valid point, when there could be, any sort of perceived lack of inclusion. There certainly could be an argument that could be made about that. But again, I don't necessarily think adding more events is really the solution. I think it's just maybe you say everything's staggered together in a week, and then the rest of the semester people are kind of like left without a lot of options of things to do. So maybe that should just be staggered out more. Maybe there should be, greater, not variety or total number, but just some time between, so that then people can go to an event, they can really enjoy it, they can digest it, they can recover, and then a little bit down the road, then they go and have another event, something else that they can enjoy. And maybe that would solve the problem, because one of the problems that I see when it comes to events, and a big reason why I don't think that we should necessarily have more, is because a lot of the events aren't necessarily even attended. So if you have several events going on and there's already fairly light attendance at them, increasing the total number of events that are happening without increasing attendance and student participation, then ultimately you're just diluting the system instead of really giving students a good experience.
I can see that. That's a valid point. I mean, honestly, there's a whole thing of apathy and everything else, and lack of interest plays a huge part in it.
Exactly. And, I don't necessarily know quite what the solution is. It seems like when you look at participation, one of the biggest things that happens is, we can bring in all kinds of people, tons of them, if we're throwing out a rap artist that uses explicit lyrics and talks about mistreating women and doing drugs. That seems to bring in a huge crowd. But then, when we're looking at some of the other events that could be, by comparison considered quite wholesome, then there's not really as much of a draw. So is it that we need to have people spouting off terrible things all the time in order for, students to come? I don't necessarily think so. I just think that maybe, more effort could be made into increasing the interest in the total number of events that we have now. But, at the same time, it is really hard, because you're trying to gauge things for, people that are in their late teens, early 20s. And, maybe some of the events that they offer right now, seem fairly arts and craftsy. And I don't want to make any enemies out of the people that are planning a lot of these events, but it just seems like a lot of the stuff that is offered is stuff that you would see catered toward a crowd in elementary school, not a crowd that, would rather be going out to the bar and having a good time.
See, I can definitely see that, because it seems like a lot of things are either tailored to people that are over 21 or they are probably in elementary school. And that's nothing to say about the people that do plan this, because we both work for Student Life, and they are, you know, the people that do plan this, and the Programming Activities Council does do some amazing things, and
Mm-hmm.
honestly, they're criticized heavily for it, so that kind of sucks. I would not want their job.
I absolutely would not want their job because, it seems like all they ever probably hear is a great amount of criticism. Either they're bringing in a terrible artist that does terrible music, or they're bringing in a lame artist that nobody cares about, or they're offering events that people say that aren't fun enough, or, maybe people are complaining that some of their events aren't inclusive enough. It seems like there's just all kinds of, you know, negativity that could be thrown their direction. And so I absolutely don't want to be seen as just piling on and criticizing. Frankly, I wouldn't want to be the one that's in charge of planning a bunch of events. I mean, we're getting ready to host our own event here, and just hosting one single event and trying to gauge it so it's going to be fun for teenagers and people that are under 21 is it's a almost it's almost like a nightmare. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun, but just that one event, planning for that is quite difficult. So, their job of having to throw out a bunch of events all year long is certainly not something that we would want to take away from them. And so I hope any of them that are listening to this podcast won't think in any way that we're saying that we could do a better job, because I know that I certainly probably couldn't.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I believe they're probably criticized more than we are. I mean, I know we've had like some controversy in the past before even I or even yourself have been
Mm-hmm.
here. We're in filling the shoes that we do. But honestly, see, the Programming Activities Council, or PAC, they put on like a lot of events throughout the year, and not really many clubs throw on enough events either. I mean, I know we do like a few every now and then, and people go out and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to have an interest night or even a bake sale. But honestly, come on, like, why can't we do something fun like, oh, let's go and like throw pies at people, or like have pillow fights out in the quad for like some day? You know, like that would be awesome.
So maybe what you're suggesting is not necessarily that PAC should be putting on
No,
more
no, I'm definitely
activities.
not saying PAC should be doing all of this. I mean, PAC does like a bulk of the work. I'm saying clubs and organizations themselves. Yeah, like we can all do better.
You know what? That is actually a really good take. When we were rolling into this, I wasn't necessarily thinking about placing the onus on clubs and organizations. I was looking at it from just overall activities in general, and of course, when one thinks of activities, they might automatically think of the Program Activities Council. And so, that's where a lot of my take on it was that we don't need more activities. We don't need more events to be happening. However, I certainly can see where you would come at this from saying that there should be more, and putting that onus on the clubs and the organizations, saying, hey, all the other organizations, all the other clubs need to step it up and provide those activities. So from that standpoint, I can say that you actually have swayed me a little bit here. As Steven Crowder might say, you have changed my mind.
And I can sit here and I can say honestly that you've changed my mind a little bit too. We do have a lot of events going on throughout a year, and yeah, they are staggered together, and maybe making them a little bit more interesting and spreading them out. That would probably do a lot to help out and everything, and especially with the whole apathetic attitude going on these days. I know it's really hard to, especially at this point and throughout the semester when midterms are around the corner and everybody's getting stressed out. I mean, this is like the perfect time to go out and have like a water gun fight.
Yeah, before it gets too cold and we're not shooting each other with ice instead.
Pretty much.
So I think we're actually kind of finding some nice middle ground here, because, my take right from the get-go has been more of the idea that less is more. And then you were saying that clubs and orgs should be more involved. So, I mean, honestly, we could probably end up with the total number of events remaining the same, but having those that are responsible for them increase. And honestly, I think that could really help out PAC as well. Because if more clubs and organizations were engaging in hosting their own activities, their own events, and found ways of engaging all those students out there that might not otherwise be engaged, then it would allow PAC to kind of scale back their total number and thus put more effort and resources into each and every one of their events.
Very, very fair point. So, what I want to do right now is I want to shift a little bit and let's talk about traditions here at CMU. So, traditions is a thing that is very lacking. Like, can you tell me off the top of your head, do you know of any crazy traditions CMU does?
The only traditions that I can really think of is like I've never participated in it, but I've heard of the underwear run that I believe happens at the beginning of the year. But like I said, I haven't actually participated in it. It seemed slightly reminiscent of maybe a tamer version of the Naked Mile.
There's actually some colleges that do that. I had a friend in Fort Collins that, he was on Snapchat spreading out like everybody in their underwear getting ready for a run. Usually that happens around a finals week, though, not towards the beginning of the year. The last time I've ever heard about that, though, was in 2016, 2017, and that was it. Nobody showed up either.
Oh, see, I wasn't even aware of what the attendance was at it. I know that, as a married man myself, I wasn't really interested in stripping down into my underwear and running around with a bunch of college students. I'd rather just be at home with my family and enjoying their company. And maybe that actually plays into a little bit for why we don't necessarily have some of the crazy traditions that you would get at some of the other schools. Is just the way that the student body is made up here at CMU. Yeah. It's not going to be like a USC or a school like that's primarily filled with traditional college students. There's a ton of non-traditional students that attend CMU. There's a ton of first-gen students that are coming from all kinds of different backgrounds. And so a lot of us do have families, or at least are maybe an older population, not geriatric and hobbling around with canes and walkers, but it's still maybe an underwear one isn't exactly what's going to draw in a lot of the students around here. So, when you talk about traditions, the only really traditions that I can necessarily think of are like the Stampede.
That's a good one too.
Although I do have to laugh here because, when you think about the word maverick, a maverick is a bull that stands alone, and yet everything that we have in our names, we have the herd, we have the stampede, we have all kinds of things about cattle that stays all together and stays as part of a group instead of branching off on their own. But of course, when you're trying to include large numbers, you have to kind of come up with those names. So I don't know what else could be named for that. But I've heard people mention a lack of tradition. Yeah. That's the only tradition that I can really think of personally myself. But what traditions would you like to see?
Honestly, I know like there's a MIT and everything. They have a puzzle challenge like annually every year. Let's see. There's even the theater department here on campus has a whole water gun like fight throughout like an entire week in the spring.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like let's just have something cool and crazy. Like, hey, we're going to run around with pillows for like an entire 2 days and just smack the crap out of each other right before finals.
Are you talking like sneak attack with pillows, or you have to hit somebody that also has a pillow?
Yeah, let's only participating people.
So you could probably end up with some real hurt feelings. You just walk up and hit somebody in the face with a pillow. And maybe something like that could and should happen. But, I think, again, we're looking at your solution. Yeah. And look at the clubs, look at the orgs. These are the groups. You talk about the theater department with their little fun water gun war that they have. Why can't other clubs and orgs introduce stuff like that? I think they should.
They really should. That or somebody like out there just like, hey, this is going to be completely college wide and include everyone. I am definitely not the smartest person. Definitely not like the creative of most creative of. Is that the correct word? Am I? Listen, I'm kind of retarded. Okay.
You can't say that.
I probably can't. But definitely somebody smarter than me should come up with something like this.
I think so. And here we rolled into this booth with opposing points of view. But at the end, I think we kind of came together. We found that common ground. We found a good solution that could benefit everybody in the student body, I believe. And so it's on you. It's on you, everybody who participates in a club, participates in an organization. It's on us because we're an organization with the Criterion. And we're trying to fix that. We're putting out our own events now. But, time will tell and see if that's successful. If it's not successful, then we're going to have to find something else. So I think we place the emphasis on clubs. We place the emphasis on organizations. And we should see both more events happen and hopefully more student engagement.
Yeah, and that's also another huge thing that we need to put the blame on is the students themselves. I mean, they got to get out there and, get involved. There's only one way to do that.
You can't start a tradition without participation.
Yeah, you definitely can't.
All right, guys, that will wrap it up for us. You've heard what our takes are on events, increasing the number, and who should be running them. So if you have any takes on this, on what you think would be a good solution, please reach out to us. Let us know your input. You can comment on Facebook. You can reach us on our website, or you can just send us an email at criterion@coloradomesa.edu.
Thanks for listening.